Hello gentle listeners, welcome back to episode 20 of Whispers of the Past. I'm your host, Josh, and today we're delving into the dark, chilling legend of Krampus, a figure as terrifying as he is fascinating. You've likely heard of Santa Claus, the jolly gift bringer of Christmas cheer, but for those who misbehave, especially in alpine folklore, there is another figure, a horned, demonic creature who punishes the naughty. His name is Krampus. His story is one of contrasts. Winter light and deep freezing darkness. He is the sinister counterpart to St. Nicholas, embodying fear, while St. Nicholas represents hope and generosity. But Krampus is more than just a scary Christmas villain. His roots stretch back into ancient mythology, where folklore meets ritual and primal fears come alive. So, as the winter winds howl outside, settle in and listen closely. We're about to explore where this terrifying legend began, how it's celebrated today, and why Krampus refuses to fade into obscurity. To understand the origins of Krampus, imagine yourself in a dark, snow-laden forest of the Alpine region. The towering peaks loom against the night sky, and the only sounds are the crackling of icy branches and the distant howling of the wind. In this harsh, unforgiving land, where survival depended on vigilance, legends were born, dark tales that explained the dangers lurking beyond the fire's glow. Krampus' story is believed to have emerged from ancient pagan winter celebrations linked to the winter solstice, a time when the boundary between the living and the spirit world was thought to be thin. These pre-Christian alpine peoples lived with the constant presence of death during the cold months. They created figures like Krampus to embody the harshness of winter itself, a force as brutal as the freezing winds that threatened to snuff out life. The name Krampus comes from the old German word Krampen, meaning claw. This clawed beast was believed to roam the forests in search of human prey, particularly disobedient children. His appearance is terrifying, a beast with shaggy black fur, towering horns spiraling like those of a ram, and a hideous, snarling face. His glowing red eyes are said to burn like embers in the dark, while his forked tongue flickers grotesquely, tasting the air. Some folklorists suggest Krampus may have been inspired by figures from Norse mythology, such as the terrifying Hel, ruler of the underworld, or the trickster god Loki. Others trace his roots to pagan fertility gods, symbols of nature's wild, untamed side. The birch branches Krampus carries are thought to be remnants of ancient fertility rites, symbolizing punishment, but also renewal. When Christianity spread through Europe, church authorities attempted to suppress pagan figures like Krampus, declaring them demonic. But in isolated mountain villages, traditions were harder to extinguish. Krampus endured, becoming intertwined with the Christian holiday of St. Nicholas Day. Over time, he was reimagined not as a god, but as St. Nicholas's dark companion, a necessary counterbalance to the generous saint. Krampus was transformed from a feared pagan entity into a twisted enforcer of moral discipline. While St. Nicholas rewarded the good, Krampus handled the wicked, a perfect partnership, balancing hope and terror in the long, dark nights of winter. Picture a frigid December night in a small, snow-covered alpine village. The streets are lined with rustic wooden houses, their windows glowing softly with candlelight. Smoke drifts lazily from chimneys, carrying the scent of wood smoke and winter spices. Families huddle together indoors, sharing stories of long winters and old folklore. Children clutch woolen blankets, their wide eyes flickering nervously towards frost-covered windows. For tonight is Krampusnacht, the night of Krampus. On December the 5th, just before the feast of St. Nicholas, the villagers brace themselves for the arrival of two contrasting figures. St. Nicholas, dressed in a bishop's robe and carrying a golden staff, will come bearing gifts for good children, sweets, nuts, and small toys placed lovingly in their shoes. But behind him comes something far more sinister. The distant sound of clanging chains echoes through the winding village streets. Some say they hear the crunch of heavy, hoofed footsteps on the frozen ground. Suddenly, dark, monstrous figures emerge from the shadows, moving with a deliberate, menacing gait. They stomp through the snow, their massive horns twisting against the frosty sky, their grotesque faces snarl beneath heavy wooden masks, and in their clawed hands, they carry thick bundles of birch branches and rusted chains. This is the Krampusloof, or Krampus Run, an ancient ritual brought to life with terrifying intensity. The Krampusloof is no ordinary parade. It's a chaotic, theatrical event filled with noise and mayhem. Krampus figures swing their chains with deafening force and lash the air with their birch branches, chasing mischievous children and shouting in guttural voices. Sparks fly from the glowing torches they carry, illuminating their snarling faces in flickering, hellish light. The air is thick with a mingling scents of burning wood and pine resin, lending an otherworldly atmosphere to the night. While the performance is meant to be frightening, there's also a sense of exhilaration in it. Families line the snowy streets, laughing nervously and snapping photos as the monstrous figures lunge towards them in mock pursuit. Children scream and flee, though many peek back with delighted grins, knowing they're safe as long as they stay close to their parents. The Krampus costumes are far more than simple disguises. They're intricate works of art, handcrafted by local artisans. The masks, often carved from wood, feature twisted, grotesque expressions, fanged mouths frozen mid-scream, hollow eyes that seem to follow you, and cracked horns that give the impression of something ancient and primal. These masks are painted in vivid, eerie colours, deep reds, burnt blacks, and icy blues. The fur costumes are made from thick, matted hides of goat, sheep, or even faux material painstakingly stitched together. In some alpine villages, the creation of Krampus costumes is considered a sacred craft, passed down from generation to generation. Families may even inherit the role of playing Krampus, treating the tradition with reverence and responsibility. The masks themselves are often blessed or ritually cleansed after the season ends, symbolically purging the dark energy they represent. The events of Krampusnacht are more than just performance. They serve as a powerful communal ritual. In olden days, they were believed to ward off evil spirits and ensure the return of light and warmth after the harshest, darkest months of the year. Villagers saw the Krampusloof as a necessary purging of misfortune and darkness, a way to reset the moral and spiritual balance. Another deeply rooted custom is the Rutenbald, or birch bundle, carried by Krampus. Traditionally, families would keep a decorated birch branch in their homes throughout the year as a talisman against bad luck. The branches symbolize both punishment and protection, reminders that discipline and respect for tradition are key to surviving winter's unforgiving grasp. And then there are the Krampus cards, or Krampuskarten, which date back to the 19th century. These intricately illustrated postcards feature Krampus in all his terrifying glory, chasing children, stuffing them into sacks, or glaring menacingly at the viewer. Some cards are darkly humorous, showing Krampus being outwitted by clever children, or reluctantly handing out gifts. The cards became a popular way to send festive greetings with a sinister twist, adding to the enduring cultural appeal of this fearsome figure. Though Krampus has evolved into a symbol of holiday mischief and dark folklore, the spirit of Krampusnacht remains rooted in the ancient belief that facing our deepest fears is necessary, not just to survive winter, but to embrace the light and hope that follow. So, when the night grows cold and dark, and the sound of clanging chains echoes faintly on the wind, perhaps it's best to stay inside, just in case the old stories are true. Old folk tales about Krampus were grim cautionary stories designed to terrify children into obedience. They served as harsh moral lessons, reinforcing the belief that misdeeds would invite something far worse than parental punishment. These tales were often whispered in firelit homes during the darkest winter nights, meant to chill both body and soul. Here are two unsettling stories about Krampus that I have created by drawing on traditional Krampus folklore. In the remote alpine village of Marentals, the story of the cursed Miller's family still haunts the locals. It is said that many winters ago, the Miller's children, Hans, Marta, and Luca, were the worst sort of troublemakers. They tormented the village animals, stole from market stalls, and even mocked the elderly priest by tying his robes to his chair during Sunday service. Their parents, weary and ashamed, tried everything to correct them, but to no avail. As Krampusnacht approached, the villagers warned the miller, "Keep your children inside, or the Krampus will come." But the children only laughed, calling the Krampus an old fool's tale. On the fateful night, the wind howled fiercely, shaking the wooden shutters of the miller's house. The family huddled near the hearth, pretending not to hear the distant clattering of chains in the snowy darkness. Suddenly, the wind died, leaving an eerie, unnatural silence. Then came the scraping sound, long, deliberate scratches at the front door, like claws dragging across the frozen wood. Before the miller could bar the door, it burst open with a violent crash, the room filled with the stench of burnt fur and frostbitten earth, and in the flickering firelight, they saw him, towering, horned, with eyes like glowing embers. The miller and his wife fell to their knees, begging for mercy, while the children screamed defiantly. Krampus let out a guttural laugh, his forked tongue flickering like a serpent's. In one swift motion, he snatched Hans and Luca, tossing them into the sack slung across his back. Marta ran, but the chains lashed out like living things, binding her wrists. By dawn, the house was empty. The snow outside was stained with dark, muddy tracks leading into the forest. The villagers found the miller's home abandoned, its windows shattered, and deep claw marks gouged into the front door. No one ever saw the family again, though on winter nights, when the wind howls through the valley, locals swear they can still hear children's cries, and the relentless clatter of chains echoing through the dark woods. This next chilling tale is from the Black Forest region, where people still speak in hushed tones of a girl named Lysel, whose fate serves as a grim warning against arrogance and cruelty. Lysel was known for her sharp tongue and wicked temper. She mocked the village elders, teased the younger children, and treated her hard-working parents with scorn. As Krampusnacht approached, the village prepared for St. Nicholas's arrival with reverence, all except for Lysel, who scorned the old traditions. "Krampus is just a story for fools and cowards," she sneered. On the night before St. Nicholas's feast, Lysel decided to prove how ridiculous the Krampus legend was. She scribbled an insulting letter. "Krampus, you're nothing but a stupid beast. I'm not afraid of you. Catch me if you can." Smirking, she tossed the letter into the hearth, sending her taunt into the night on the rising smoke. That night, a fierce snowstorm descended on the village, and the wind roared like a living thing. Her parents begged her to stay near the fire, but Lysel scoffed and went to bed, unafraid. As the old grandfather clock struck midnight, the wind ceased. The house fell into an unnatural silence. Suddenly, heavy hoofbeats echoed outside, slow and deliberate. Frost crept across the windows, forming strange, twisting patterns. Before Lysel could scream, the door to her room flew open with a bone-chilling crash. The shadows twisted into monstrous shapes as something large and terrible filled the doorway. By dawn, Lysel's bed was empty, its sheets frozen stiff with frost. The villagers searched the forest, calling her name, but there was no trace of the girl, only a single, small wooden shoe left by the hearth, filled with cold, black coal. Some say she was dragged into the underworld, doomed to wander as one of Krampus's chained thralls. Others whisper that on stormy nights, if you listen closely near the old forest path, you can still hear her desperate cries on the howling wind. These tales, grim and relentless, were passed down to keep children in line, but perhaps they served another purpose as well, a warning that there are dark forces we can never fully explain. In the deep forests and snow-bound villages, where the line between myth and reality blurs, maybe, just maybe, Krampus still roams, searching for the disobedient and the defiant. Throughout time, Krampus has evolved from a terrifying figure of alpine lore into a global symbol of dark mythology. His reach extends far beyond the snow-covered peaks of the Austrian Alps, infiltrating cultures across Europe, and now even the modern world. From the chilly streets of Vienna to the festive chaos of New Orleans, Krampus has found a place in the hearts of those who seek a darker twist on holiday traditions. The first signs of Krampus's international journey appeared in the mid-20th century, when European immigrants brought their customs to the United States. As European populations grew in cities like New York, Chicago, and New Orleans, so did the stories of Krampus. Today, cities across North America now host their own Krampusnacht celebrations. The most notable of these is in New Orleans, where revelers gather each December to parade through the streets in elaborate Krampus costumes, combining the grotesque with the festive. The celebration has grown into a large, chaotic street festival that mixes horror, humor, and holiday cheer, and it's a reminder that Krampus is no longer confined to the remote villages of Europe. Krampus's rise in pop culture has been nothing short of remarkable. In 2015, the release of the horror comedy film Krampus brought the legend to a new generation, introducing the myth to mainstream audiences. The film blends holiday spirit with dark humor and nightmare fuel, as Krampus terrorizes a dysfunctional family during Christmas. The success of the film has led to a resurgence of interest in Krampus-themed events and media, further cementing his status as a symbol of holiday chaos. Krampus also thrives as a symbol of rebellion and defiance. In a world obsessed with sanitized holiday cheer and the perfect Christmas experience, Krampus stands as a reminder that even Christmas has a dark side, that not all stories end with joy, and not all spirits bring gifts. His presence disrupts the traditional narrative, reminding us that ancient traditions endure not just because of their charm, but because they speak to something primal within us. The dark aspects of the season, the cold, the long nights, the struggle for light, are as much a part of a holiday as the twinkling lights and festive feasts. Krampus represents that primal force of chaos, and the ancient need for balance between light and dark. But Krampus's cultural resurgence is also about reclaiming space for things that don't fit into the tidy, commercialized image of the holiday season. In an era when Christmas can sometimes feel more like a marketing gimmick than a celebration of community, Krampus offers an alternative. He challenges the idea of a perfect, cookie-cutter holiday, and instead embraces the chaos, the messiness, and the unpredictability of life. This rebellious spirit makes Krampus especially resonant in our modern world, where perfection is often expected and conformity is encouraged. Krampus reminds us that it's okay to rebel, to embrace the darkness, and to acknowledge that every story has two sides. So, the next time you hang your stockings by the chimney with care, remember the other side of a holiday coin, the one with hooves, horns, and a thirst for mischief. The next time you see a Santa, or hear the jingle of sleigh bells, think of Krampus lurking in the shadows, watching, waiting, ready to remind us that the holiday season isn't just about giving and receiving, it's also about the lessons we learn in facing the darker parts of ourselves. Until next time, remember the legend of Krampus, and be good, very good, or you might find yourself on the wrong list. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, then please consider sharing it with your friends. And if you want to send me a review or suggestions for future episodes, then send them to whispersofthepastreviews@gmail.com. See you next time.